China has completely overtaken the United States of America in manufacturing. In fact, most manufacturing is outsourced to China. That is why the American people are waking up. They are seeing that their empire has collapsed. Not that it's collapsing, has actually collapsed.
Over 75% of Americans don't support this war. So why billions still being spent? Something isn't right. Stay with me. Watch this video till the end.
First and foremost, we have to understand that what is happening in West Asia and the Middle East is very complex. It's not simple. The contexts are many, you understand? And it has a history of at least 500 to 700 years. So to attempt to simplify it is to mislead. You cannot simplify this very complex matter. It's important for us to understand that 75% of U.S. citizens are opposed to the war. Official statistics. 75% of U.S. citizens are opposed to this war. They think it's senseless, it is not justified, has no merit. 75% of U.S. citizens. Now one may ask, why? Even before we answer the question why, yesterday, the Trump administration was blaming the U.S. media, saying that the U.S. media is not with them and that the U.S. media is supporting Iran. Donald Trump took on CNN. There are even doubts about his own supporters in the media, Fox News and so on, some of the things they are putting out. You understand? This is one of the contexts that we have to grapple with when we come to analyze this situation. Now, it's important to ask a question. How come the U.S. citizens are against this war? 75%, not 51%, 75%. How come? You see, everybody in the United States of America sees the U.S. in decline. And the decline is obvious. On the streets of Philadelphia, you find hundreds of people, I'm not talking about tens, hundreds of people who are homeless, who are sleeping rough on the streets. They cannot feed themselves. You understand? They have no accommodation, they have no access to health care, they have no access to education. Washington, on the streets of Washington, there are thousands of homeless people. On the streets of New York, Los Angeles, in California, everywhere. The American people cannot afford bread. They are dying out of hunger, starvation. They have no access to social services. This is the great America. And I heard my friend and brother Abbas describe America in glowing terms. This is America. This is the true America. If you go to New York today, the subway system, which used to be the pride of New York, is in shambles. It's one of the worst subways in the world. It cannot compare to the subway in London. It cannot compare to the subway in Moscow. It cannot compare to the subway in Pyongyang. It is one of the worst. It is in shambles, complete shambles. This is the USA. You understand? Michael Moore did a documentary comparing the health system in the United States of America and the health system in Cuba. Cuba was way ahead when it came to providing for the health needs of its citizens and so on. So by every indicator, if you take the literacy rate, America is not in the top 10. Whatever social indicator you take, America is declining. Today, if you look at the industrial sector, how much manufacturing takes place in the United States of America? How much manufacturing? China has completely overtaken the United States of America in manufacturing. In fact, most manufacturing is outsourced to China. That is why the American people are waking up. They are seeing that their empire has collapsed. Not that it's collapsing, has actually collapsed. How does America maintain its apparent dominance? America maintains its apparent dominance because of this petrodollar agreement. The agreement in the past, that is changing now, which says that petroleum prices should be priced in the dollar. Because America left the gold standard a long time ago. The American dollar is no longer backed by gold. It's useless paper. America just prints the dollar. It has no backing. It left the gold standard. So what makes the American dollar useful and powerful is that the price of petroleum products are priced in the dollar. The moment we stop buying petrol in the dollar, the US currency will completely collapse. That is why America is desperate. Because today, Russia is selling its oil not in the dollar. It's selling its oil in rubles. China is selling its oil or is trading in oil in the yuan, not in the dollar. And many countries are beginning to follow the example, India and so on. So the US has panicked. Now, through this system, which makes the dollar the currency of preference for international trade, what the US did or continues to do is that it exports its inflation. US has a huge deficit. How does it resolve it? It just prints more paper. Paper which is not backed by anything, just prints more. And because all of us have become dependent on the dollar, that way the US is able to export its inflation. The US burdens us. The inflation we suffer here, our balance of payments problems and so on, is partly the result of US dominance, which is nothing. US dominance is not based on production, it's not based on anything. It's just based on a world system which says that we should buy petroleum products in dollars. You understand? So the people of America, the ordinary citizens, the Chicanos, the Latinos, the African Americans and so on, want to see the rebirth of the country. They want to see a country which is back in production. They want to see a country which is opening up social services for the disadvantaged and so on, rather than a country which today is spending close to $2 billion a day on the war with Iran. That is how much money the US is spending on this senseless aggression against a sovereign state. So even the citizens of the US are opposed to this war. That's one context. Let's look at another context. The Iran nuclear program did not begin with the Iranian Revolution in 1979. The nuclear program existed before the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Indeed, the nuclear program started in 1954. And a lot of people don't know this. The Iranian nuclear program started in 1954. And it started with the assistance of the United States of America. When the Iranian nuclear program started, the US provided the equipment and so on for the start of the program. In fact, the US trained more than 4,000 nuclear scientists to start the program. That program was assisted by Germany and France. They were suppliers to that program and so on. And they had no problem with the Iranian nuclear program then. Why? Because they had a puppet regime in Tehran. Okay? They began having problems with the Iranian nuclear program after 1979. And by the way, the Iranian nuclear program, when it started in 1954, under American supervision and so on, achieved 95% enrichment. 95% enrichment. The Americans had no problem with it. 95% enrichment of uranium. They had no problems with it. Okay. Now, the revolution occurred. U.S. interest was obviously subverted because Iran became independent. Iran insisted on its sovereignty and so on. The U.S. tried many shenanigans in order to subvert the Iranian Revolution. And one of the things they did was to provide assistance to Iraq to attack Iran. The Iraq-Iran war, don't forget it, was instigated by the U.S. Saddam Hussein was assisted by the U.S. to wage war on Iran. The U.S. was completely defeated in that war. The U.S. and its allies were completely defeated in that war. You understand? And since then, the U.S. and its allies have constantly been subverting the Iranian Revolution. That is part of the historical context. But more. You see, the United States of America decided that whatever it takes, it will overthrow the Iranian regime and establish a puppet regime for the only reason that it needed to control energy resources. That's the key. And you see, I don't make this as empty claims. For anybody listening to us this morning, I refer to the Cheney report of 2001. Just Google it on the internet, it will pop up, the Cheney report of 2001. When Bush was elected as president of the U.S. in 2000, he set up the Cheney Committee to assess U.S. energy needs and to make recommendations for resolving the problems associated with how to get U.S. energy needs satisfied. And that is why the Cheney wrote the Cheney report, the Cheney Committee wrote what has now come to be known as the Cheney report, which was published in 2001. In the Cheney report, if you read the Cheney report, you are left with no doubt at all that the U.S. ambition is to control global supply of oil. Now, what frightens me as a West African is that there's a portion of the Cheney report which says that it's becoming increasingly difficult to control West Asia, Middle East, the Gulf area. And the U.S. needs to shift its attention to West Africa because West Africa has a huge potential for the production of gas and petroleum and so on. And that if need be, the U.S. should use military force to maintain its control and dominance in West Africa. It's in the Cheney report. Go and read it. Google it. Read it.